Hi, good morning, good day. This is Gordon Bates, photographer at Graphing of Photons. I'm going to show you how to do frequency separation to smooth out the texture of somebody's skin. And within this tutorial, we're also going to change the color of the highlights, which I've also covered in another tutorial. Let's look at a before and after so you can see what the point of doing this is. This is where we started, was right here. This is the photo we started with. And by smoothing out the texture of the skin, I'm also referring to the color. So notice the unevenness of the color on the cheeks, under the eyes, a little bit on the forehead. So watch those areas. And I'm going to show you the before and after. Here's before, there's after. Before, after. Okay? So let's start from the very beginning. Let's just delete all of these. And this is where the image is going to start. I'm gonna get that coffee. Alright. So before starting to edit, it's always a good idea to Control J, which duplicates the layer. In this case, we're going to do it 2 more times. And this copy 2 and copy 3 are going to be used for our frequency separation. So within the frequency separation, the top 2 layers are going to get used. This is going to become the texture. Texture needs to be above the color layer. This layer is going to be the color layer. So you have texture, color, okay. So go ahead and get your layers duplicated and have the top 2 layers be texture on the very top and then color. And then select multiple layers by clicking on one, hold Control, click on the other, and then do Control G to group them. Name that group so you can stay organized. And now we have these layers in a group. And what we're going to do is make this texture layer not visible. So click on the eyeball there. On this color layer, we want to blur this color layer. This is where the frequency separation begins. So zoom in to about 100%. You can see 100% right here. Or just so that you can see a lot of the detail in the photo. I'm going to do a Gaussian blur. So filter, blur, and go down here, Gaussian blur. And we want to blur it so we're to the point where the texture starts to disappear. You can also use this viewing window. This is pretty free of distractions. You notice this is 100%. It's the same size as, right? So if you want, zoom in a little more. 200, that's too much. Stay at 100%. And we want the details, like the texture details, to disappear. That's what kind of radius we want. So I can still see the difference between the pupil and the iris. So pump it up a little bit more to where that just kind of blends in. There we go. So now I don't really see a difference between the pupil and the iris. Okay, so we've gotten rid of the texture out of the color layer. All we really have is color now. It's just kind of it's just color. I'm going to push it a little bit more. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Now, turn your texture layer back on. We're going to go and do image. Okay, with this texture layer selected, make sure the texture layer is selected. Go to image, apply image, and for layers, right here, we're doing the texture layer. Actually, the texture layer is what we're on. So we need to select color, because we're going to apply this image to the color layer. We already have texture selected here. So make sure in here the layer is color, because color layer is the layer that we're applying the texture layer to. And this is where we're going to get the texture extracted. We're going to go into the blending and subtract. One more thing that you need to pay attention to, make sure you're on subtract, is when you're in subtract, you're going to get this scale and offset. Now, this is the difference between knowing and understanding. I know that I'm supposed to use the scale of 2 with an offset of 128. I don't understand why, but I just know that that works. So I didn't experiment and find it. Somebody told me, and I just go with it. Okay, so now we have a texture layer. Right here, we have a color layer, and then one more step to get the texture and the layer back together, to make it look like they're back together, is we're going to go into the blend mode with the texture layer selected, go into the blend mode, and do linear light. Okay, now a little test you can do is, if you did this right, you should be able to turn your frequency separation eyeball off and not see a difference. Off, on, off, on. I need more coffee. I just woke up. I need that coffee. Get that coffee. Okay. Let's start using the frequency separation layer now. I want to smooth out the color. There are so many applications of frequency separation because you can now edit a texture layer independently from a color layer. I'm just going to keep it very basic right now. We're going to use it to smooth out skin. But I would strongly encourage you to experiment with clone stamping and blurring on the texture layer. We're going to do it on the color layer right now. So let's just zoom in real good, and let's get the brush. Let's get not brush tool. Let's get the lasso tool, And I'm going to select areas where I want to smooth out the color. And we're not going to do the entire forehead all at once. You want to keep it kind of to small areas. We also don't want this change to be noticeable. So I feather with about a 10 pixel radius. And what that does is, when my hand was shaking, when I was drawing with the mouse, it smoothed out those bumps. See? Without feathering, with feathering. Without, with. Okay. Feathered. I'm also going to go to Gaussian Blur. Oops. Blur, Gaussian Blur. And you can see, if I pump it all the way up, that gets crazy. We don't want that. And if it's all the way down, it doesn't do anything. So pump it up a little bit until these colors start to blur into each other. But notice the texture is always maintained. See, it's always the same texture, just the color is changing. Not color is changing, the color is being manipulated. Okay. So you can do the preview, on and off. That's the difference we just made. It's pretty good. And then if you do Control D, it will deselect. And now we can highlight a new area. I want to do the next little patch above where I just now did. Feather. Okay. Filter. If you click this Gaussian blur, it's just going to do the same exact blur as you did before, which that might be what you want, but I like to control each one on a case-by-case basis. So let's go all the way down and then start pumping it up until you notice that the colors are all getting blurred together. I like that. Before, after, before, after. Okay, there's some more area on the forehead that we could perfect a little bit. Let's just do below these eyes and the cheek, and you'll see a huge difference in the photo just by doing those. So I'm going to do underneath the eyes. This is the photo teacher at my school. He's a pretty cool guy. We do a lot of photography stuff together. I mean, he's alright. His class could be watching this tutorial right now. That's why I gotta, Okay. Blur, Gaussian blur. And here's the before, after, before, after. I'm going to tone it down a little bit. Maybe, so there's still some kind of stuff going on under the eyes, because everybody, normally there's some shadows and there's some texture in the skin. We're not trying to make a painting out of this, we're just trying to smooth stuff out, so that looks pretty smooth. We still have some shadows, we still have the texture, so it looks like a human. That's good. Let's go over and do this other eye, and this time let's include right here in the mix. Feather, if you feather with too big of a radius, this is gonna disappear. You're gonna see a little bit disappear, but that's alright. We're gonna go with it. It's fine. Filter, Gaussian blur, Okay, and again, we're not making a painting, so I think that's good like that. We're going to leave that. Control D, deselect, and then we just have the cheeks, and we'll be done. I'm going to go a little bit faster. Okay, I'm not doing the best job that I could do right now. I'm just doing enough to show you an example for the purpose of the tutorial. Okay, feather, filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Do a little preview, on, off, on, off, on. Okay. So let's see the difference that just doing that made. Photo looks pretty good. This is our frequency separation group. Remember, it's a group. These are the layers inside of the group. Texture layer, color layer, inside of the frequency separation group. Let's turn it off and on by doing the eyeball. And it makes a very, very big difference, actually. Okay, now last thing, I'm going to add that color onto there. You know what? Okay. Alright. Okay. So, getting layers to go above groups is kind of tricky sometimes. See, it's trying to put it inside the group. There we go. Okay, there. Okay, this is going to be our highlight color. And I'm just going to paint any color that's not black or white. Okay, let's do that. I'm going to paint any color that's not black or white, and then we're going to use a Hue Saturation adjustment layer to change the color. Okay, so paint along your highlights. I'm not going to go into as much detail as I normally would. I'm just doing this as a demonstration. But we want to get this painted onto where the highlights are from the backlight that was lighting from behind the model. So that means the hand, the football, and the head on the arm, the sleeve of the shirt. Okay, so we're just painting on the color layer right now. And we're going to use conditional blending, and we're also going to do the color blend mode in order to clean this up. So I think that's about as far as I'm going to take it. Let's first do, if you double click on the layer, you get into layer style, and blend if is the conditional blending that I was referring to. We want to blend this color if the blending condition we want to be if the underlying layer is not black. So let's remove the black. Okay, and notice how it's kind of abrupt and splotchy. So we're going to feather it. We're going to remove that black. The pure black is gone now. So if you hold down the Alt key and grab this slider, you can feather it too. So I'm kind of feathering out the mid-tones. cut out more black, feather out the midtones, and it still looks unnatural because there's also some areas that you'll have to clean up like this. It still looks unnatural because there's no texture on the football or the face or the hair. So to fix that, you do color blend mode. Alright, it's looking better. So definitely if I was doing this, I would clean up some more of this stuff, like on the fingers, the inside of the ear here, right, along here. Well, what we can do for right now though is you can change the opacity, and that's going to make it look a little bit better. So change the opacity and you get it just on the highlights. So overall image comparison here is before and after. Before and after. Even a little less opacity. Before, after, before, after. Alright. So in this tutorial, we used frequency separation to smooth out the color on the skin of a model. So the kind of the splotchiness, as you might call it, the shadows, how the highlights were uneven, there's a little bit of rosiness that we smoothed out. And additionally to that, we used conditional blending and the color blend mode to change the color of the highlights on the photo. I hope you find other applications for this outside of portraits. Also, hopefully this was useful for you, and I would like to know if you learned something. So let me know if you learned something or not, and have a good day.